Rahim. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. On behalf of the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OAPEC, I would like to welcome all of you to be with us today. And also I would like to thank speakers who are with us today also to give their views and lectures about the theme of this session, which is about creating value from CO2. And also I would like to all those who helped us and assisted us to arrange this very important session. Thank you very much. And we have here in our this session during 1 hour or 1.5 hour. I don't know what's the exact time allocated to the session. And we have Dr. Tijani from Saudi Aramco. And also we have Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Jdeya from Saudi Sabiq, and Mr. Nafis Al-Nafisi from Green Carbon Company from Kuwait, and also Mr. Mubarak Al-Mirri from KFAK, the state of Qatar. And I would like to thank all of them who are here today with us. And the moderator today will be Ms. Nov Aburas from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And with your permission, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Nov just to moderate this session. Ms. Nov, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abbas, Your Excellency, Mr. Abbas Al-Naqi, Secretary General of Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OAPEC. Thank you very much. I'm Nofa Baras from Saudi Aramco, and we're going to be holding the CO2 value from CO2 side event. As you know, GCC countries will share efforts, progress, and perspectives on future market potential for CO2 capture, transportation, and conversion into feedstock, value-adding processes, and utilization in a broader range of industries, including chemicals, cement manufacturing, and other specific examples from application industries. Our first presentation is going to be CO2 to value from Dr. Tijani from Saudi Aramco. Let me give you a little bit of introduction about Dr. Tijani. Dr. Tijani Niaz is a research science consultant at Saudi Aramco Research and Development Center, Dhahran. He held the Carbon Management Chief Technologist position for years, overseeing and directing Saudi Aramco research related to CO2 capture, utilization, and storage, and directing Saudi Aramco's research related to CO2 capture, utilization, and storage, energy efficiency, and renewable energies. Prior to joining Saudi Aramco in 2008, Dr. Niaz was the head of the Chemical Engineering Department at the French Petroleum Institute in France. Dr. Niaz received a BS and MS degree from École Nationale Supérieure d'Électricité et de Mécanique de Nancy, and his PhD degree from Institut National Polytechnique de Lorraine in France. Let me give the floor to Dr. Niaz.
Okay, so if you don't mind, I will start, right?
Sure.
So thank you very much, No, for this kind introduction. So I think the theme of this session is it is very exciting, is because the underlying idea is eventually we could make value from CO2 and then transforming the climate challenge maybe in opportunities or business opportunities. So today what I'm trying to share with you is an experience we had from Saudi Aramco in the 80s on an initiative where we were able to transform a waste material at that time into a business opportunity. And then I will try to make a parallel from this to see how we can build on that experience to also draw pathways on converting CO2, which is a waste today, into value. And then I will share with you what Saudi Aramco is doing right now in achieving that objective. So let me start by sharing some of the key milestones in Saudi Aramco's journey in mitigating emissions, and then also developing leadership in environmental issues. So back in the 80s, methane was flared from all oil and gas production wells. It was a waste material, right? People used to flare methane and then recover only the liquid hydrocarbons, which were the most valuable at that time. So at that time, the company decided and the country decided to invest massively on a master gas gathering system, which captures all the methane emissions and then try to see what we can make from those methane emissions. So we use that gas for producing power using from power generation. And most also importantly, we use that gas also to enable a completely new business in the petrochemical industry, which is now representing 43% of the kingdom manufacturing GDP, with thousands of jobs that has been created from that initiatives, and one of the world leading chemical company in the world today, which is SABIC, represented here. So this is just to give you an example of how technology can transform challenges into business opportunities. And then, by the way, since now we are in the COP22, that initiative has resulted cumulatively since then in 2.8 gigaton of CO2 that has been avoided. 2.8 gigaton is today the entire CO2 emissions from the world light duty energy sector. So this is massive. This is really very significant in terms of emission reduction. And we were able to transform 4 billion cubic feet of natural gas into product. So another important milestone for the kingdom before even the climate change became extremely important was in 2000, when with our energy management program, with objectives to try to see what we can get, how can we get more from a given amount of energy through energy efficiency. So we have built in our company 2.3 gigawatt cogeneration capacity, which is now near giving us self-sufficiency in terms of electricity use in our operation. So our flaring, going back to what I said before, is now less than 1%. This gives us really very far, give us a very strong leadership across the whole industry. We are the best when it comes to flare reduction from the whole oil and gas sector. So our energy management system has resulted into about 200,000 of barrels of crude oil saved per day, which is roughly 130 million tons of CO2 also avoided. This was also another important milestone for us. And then in 2004, we looked at the climate change more seriously with an articulation of our climate change strategy from a technology point of view, which came up with a clear roadmap looking at how can we reduce emissions from our operation, which is from prompt sources, emissions from our product, which is the managing emission from the transportation. How can we make use of CO2 utilization, CO2 capture and sequestration, also, and energy efficiency. Those were the 5 pillars of our carbon management roadmap in what was launched in 2014. That roadmap has enabled us to deliver tangible results. So here I'm just citing 2 examples. In 2011, we had our first mobile carbon capture vehicle, which was exhibited last year in Paris. This is a vehicle which is capable of capturing 25% of its own CO2 emissions and then store them on board until the vehicle goes back to the gas station, where the CO2 can be released and then utilized for sequestration or for utilization, etc. It's still an R&D concept, but I think it's a very good example of how technology can really innovate in mitigating CO2 emissions. Last year also, we commissioned our first CO2 enhanced oil recovery project, which is the largest in the Middle East. We're not doing it because we are out of oil, because most of the Saudi reservoirs are very young. We have plenty of oil in Saudi Arabia, but we invested in this pilot just to develop the knowledge which is associated with storing CO2 in oil reservoirs, and then avail that knowledge for wider scale deployment across the world. The next milestone in our environmental journey was was in 2010 with the company Accelerated Transformation Program, with the vision to diversify the company's portfolio beyond the traditional oil and gas and give us also some leadership in the chemical industry and also the power generation industry. This calls for a significant scale-up of our R&D capabilities. In 2010, we had only two R&D organizations in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. Today, we have 11 R&D organizations across the world, and 6 of them are directly or indirectly working on issues related to CO2 emission mitigation from an R&D point of view. So our R&D footprint then was extended significantly, with a significant also expansion of our manpower, with the vision to achieve more than 1,000 researchers by 2020, and spend $500 million every year on R&D. So we took that opportunity also to revisit our carbon management strategy, which came clearly with 3 major topics. One is energy efficiency, both on our operation, refineries, gas separation unit, and also on our program, our products. We have a significant R&D program on how to enable better energy efficiency in the transportation, and we have invested significantly in this area, supporting the automakers make the better use of petroleum products. And we get into renewables, mainly looking at solar energy. And then the last one, which is a more longer term technology, which is a link with the topic of the today, it is carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration. So this is just to remind for the people who are not familiar with the CCS, what it is about. It's basically capturing carbon capture from point source and then transporting it using pipelines, ships, boats, or whatever, to a storage location. So this technology, CCS, is very important for achieving global climate objective. I'm just citing here the 5th IPCC assessment report, which is saying that without CCS, long-term global climate goals may not be attainable. So the point that I'm trying to make here is CCS is not an option. We have to have CCS, otherwise the cost of mitigation will have to increase significantly. And then the number that has been provided by the International Energy Agency is the cost of mitigating climate change without CCS will increase by 138%. So this is significant. So then CCS will have to play an important role. And as per IEA, CCS is expected to play about 14% in the long-term energy technology portfolio. Now, where do we stand with the CCS? Although it's a very important and critical technology, but because CCS is still facing some challenges because it is still associated with high capital and operating cost. Storage capacity has been a concern in some jurisdictions for some time. There is a lack of tailored policy because this is a climate-driven technology. For the technology to deliver on its mandate, you need to have appropriated policy instrument and market mechanism in order to accelerate the development of CCS. So there is no market push right now in the private sector for CCS because of lack of these policy instruments. And then the last one is there is also a public awareness or perception issue. People don't necessarily want to have CO2 storage, in their backyard. So this is a concern also. But the good news is Aramco is actually led the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, which is looking at how to address all these issues. And then last week, the OGCI has made an announcement to invest about $1 billion on clean energy technologies, and CCS is going to be a significant portion of that investment. So Aramco is part of that initiative. We're leading part of this work, and we believe that we have the capability as an oil industry to deliver on the CCS, where we have very strong expertise. Now, sequestration is storing CO2 as a waste. But we can look also at what else can we do with CCS, with CO2 other than sequestration, right? And this is what I'm trying to share here. So it's basically, as you can see, we have many different opportunities to utilize CO2. CO2 can be utilized to produce fuels, chemicals, polymers, carbonate, enhanced oil recovery to provide additional resources, and also to produce power. And this is just an example of what's going on the small startup companies that are trying to make value from CCS. As you can see here, you have a lot of commodity chemicals, concrete materials being developed by companies, small companies, in order to make use of CO2. Now, why this is important and what are the main drivers behind this? I already talked about the carbon sequestration, which is still stuck at the pre-commercial scale stage, but people are working on unlocking the potential of this technology. CO2 utilization can complement geological storage. It's not competing, it will complement the geological storage and create additional beneficial use of CO2 and generate revenues that may offset the carbon capture costs and then make CCS a more viable and credible solution. Okay, so the other thing that I want to mention on the motivation behind the CCS is what has been going on over the past years on the renewables, where significant cost reduction has been witnessed mainly on the PV photovoltaic sector. And we believe that this is a great opportunity to make use of renewables energy and then have CO2 be a kind of energy carrier for renewables energy, especially keeping in mind that the significant growth of energy in the future. Now, but this faces some challenges also. Making use of CO2 to produce chemicals face some challenges. We need to develop new materials such as catalysts, for example, that will accelerate the conversion of CO2 into fuels and chemicals, keeping in mind that CO2 doesn't have very good thermodynamic property for conversion. Okay. And now I will, since the time is running very fast, I will just give you an example of what Saudi Aramco is doing into this whole map. Here, I just put in circle, the areas where we are working. We are investing our R&D resources in order to advance those technologies. So we are trying to look at how to convert CO2 into fuels, chemicals, polymers, carbonate, enhanced oil recovery, and the power generation also. Okay. There will be a presentation on our initiative for enhanced CO2 enhanced oil recovery, and invite you guys to visit the GCC pavilion. I think tomorrow there will be a more detailed presentation on CO2 EOR. But basically, this is the largest CO2 EOR pilot in the Middle East, which is storing about 800,000 tons of CO2 per year using an 85 kilometer pipeline from a natural gas NGL plant to the the world's largest onshore oil field, which is Gawar, and we're injecting CO2 into the Osmania site. CO2 can be utilized also in the power sector as a thermal carrier, and the benefit of the CO2 because of its specific conditions under supercritical conditions. That technology has a potential to achieve significant increase on the efficiency, 5 to 10% improvement, okay, with reduced footprint of the plant. It's basically, as you can see in the picture here, the footprint of a supercritical CO2-based cycle is much smaller than the footprint of conventional ranking cycle with additional efficiency gain. So this is an initiative that we launched this year in partnership with the United States under the umbrella of the Mission Innovation that was launched last year during COP21. We're working closely with the Department of Energy to further develop this technology and then build about 10 megawatt pilot plant in Saudi Arabia. So the next exciting things that I want to talk under this initiative is CO2 polymerization. Saudi Aramco has acquired last week for $100 million a company, Novomer, which is now becoming Aramco Performance Material. The name will have to change. And this company, as we speak right now, is selling commercial products that are storing 50% of CO2 into polymers. Okay, it's a conversion of waste CO2 in cleaner, high-value end product with significant performance, cost, and carbon footprint improvement. 1/3 of the carbon footprint from conventional technologies. So this is not R&D, this is real business where we are storing CO2 in advanced polymers with enhanced properties. I think it's built the hope that in the future we will be able to scale up those markets and then extend the sink of CO2 storage. CO2 mineralization, very quickly, CO2 can be stored in concrete materials. The challenge here is how to accelerate the rate of these mineralization processes. We're working on this on our global research network that I mentioned earlier. And the other topics that or focus area that we are working on is on converting CO2 into fuels or chemicals, and with the vision to close the carbon cycle with renewables, right? So the idea would be to utilize CO2 to carry some of the renewable energy and then close somehow the carbon cycle. So in this topic, we're working on two different technologies. One is electrochemical CO2 conversion, where we use electrochemical catalysts to convert CO2 into fuels and chemicals. It's a promising technology, very difficult challenge from a material perspective. We are also working on photochemical conversion of CO2 into fuels and chemicals. So here the idea is to convert directly the photon that's coming from the sunlight into chemicals and fuels. So I know time is running very fast. So this is my last slide. Just want to recap some of the important points. Carbon capture and sequestration is not an option. It's something which is very critical for achieving the climate ambitions. Okay, we want to be able to achieve the 2-degree scenario without CCS. CCS can achieve significant emission reduction in the power and industry sector, and CCS will make use of existing fossil fuel infrastructure, which is massive and significant. But CO2 can be also converted into value, complementing storage in geological formations. So we at Saudi Aramco have successfully track record in converting methane into value, and we believe that we can do the same when it comes to the CO2 challenge. A good example is the Aramco performance material, where we are storing, as we speak right now, 50% CO2 into polymers that has enhanced properties against the conventional products. But we need collaboration. We need to do strategic research on this. We need to develop breakthrough materials, breakthrough catalysts that will accelerate the CO2, the conversion rate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tijani, on your presentation and creating value from CO2 from Saudi Aramco. We have another presentation from Saudi Arabia by Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Judai from SABIC. The presentation is going to be about investing in innovation through carbon capture and utilization. Let me give you a little bit of brief about his background. Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Judai has over 23 years of experience in technology development projects. Currently, he is in Corporate Program Director at the Technology and Innovation Department, SABIC company. Dr. Judai's current involvement include formulation of mid and long-term corporate strategies, development of technology roadmaps, as well as the portfolio management of various developmental programs. He's been granted several patents in process development and environmental field. He was the key developer of technology used in the world's largest carbon dioxide purification plant that's been commercialized at United Company. Dr. Judai is a UOP engineering fellow with a PhD in chemical engineering and a master's degree in industrial management. Let me give the floor to Dr. Judai. And regarding the questions, I'm sorry, I did not clarify that at the beginning of this event. We'll hold on to all the questions by the end of all the presenters.
Welcome, everybody. I'm going to talk about part of SABIC leading efforts in CO2 capturing, purification, and utilization. And in this part, I'm going to talk about the CO2 purification in general and SABIC's effort in CO2 purification. So this is just highlight about SABIC company. It's a global company where we are the fourth largest diversified chemical company with 40,000 employees in 50 countries. And you can see as a global company, the patents and also the technologies that we are using. The objective of this presentation is to talk in general about CO2 sources. So the CO2 sources can be extracted from the flue gas and also from the concentrated CO2. In flue gas, you need to recover the CO2 because the concentration of CO2 is low compared to the concentrated CO2 streams. So we are also going to show you the SABIC efforts in the development of CO2 purification and also utilizing this CO2 to valuable products. The CO2 capturing start from the ethylene oxide plants where you have the concentrated CO2. Then will be the CO2 will be dried, purified, and then used for different alternatives. And this will give you just an examples of CO2 utilization in general. The CO2 streams, as I mentioned, has some contaminants, and you cannot use it as is. For industrial grade, the CO2 from the fertilizers plants can be used directly without any purification, and the CO2 from ethylene oxide plants need to be purified. It contains some contaminants like unsaturated, saturated, and chlorinated hydrocarbons. The steel reduction plants also has a CO2 is being vented also to the atmosphere, and the H2S needs to be removed from the CO2 if we want to utilize this CO2. In SABIC history with CO2 capturing, purification, and utilization, we targeted different sources to find the best alternative source for the CO2. So we found the CO2 from ethylene oxide plants is one of the good alternatives for the CO2 sources. The problem of the CO2 source in the ethylene oxide plant, you cannot use it as is. So what we did, we contacted different vendors to not to reinvent the wheel and see if we could utilize their technologies. The question was that the reply was negative because there is no company is willing to give the warranty for the high pure CO2, especially from the ethylene oxide plants. So we developed a process in-house, and also we built a pilot plant and connected a slipstream from the ethylene oxide plant where we can test this CO2, and then finally we have the results were better than the expected results, and also it was patented in US and also European offices. So this is the process where you have the CO2. You started from the CO2 where it's saturated with water. This CO2 needs to be dried before it goes to the compressor, and then the gas will be compressed and then go to the heater to go to the oxidation reactor. The oxidation reactors, we need excess oxygen to oxidize the unsaturated and the chlorinated hydrocarbons. And then the CO2 will be purified, and the only contaminants is produced is the HCl. So the HCl will be absorbed in the HCl adsorber, and finally it will go to the deoxo unit where you purify the CO2 and get high pure CO2. The chlorides level was in the range between 0.1 to 4 ppm, and also the ethylene was around 1300 ppm. You see the CO2 after the adsorption was 0.004 ppm, and the ethylene was only 1. So the requirement for the methanol catalyst to be less than 0.01 and also less than 20 ppm in the unsaturated hydrocarbons. So we are really happy about the process in general and also the performance of the process. So there are so many areas where you can utilize the CO2 in the industrial areas. For example, in the methanol, where you use CO2 and hydrogen. In urea, where you can use the ammonia and CO2, and also in the polycarbonate. Just to give you an example about the requirements for the methanol, this is very small plant. It's just an example. To produce 1,800 metric ton per day, you need around 2,700 metric ton per day of CO2 and 400 metric ton per day of hydrogen. Also, I will show you one of the important efforts that has been done by SABIC to build the world's largest CO2 plant, which is around 500,000 metric ton per annum. And this plant is used to produce CO2, where we can utilize it for methanol plant, for urea plant, and also a small part of this CO2 can be used as a food grade. So in general, this will highlight SABIC efforts in developing the technology for the CO2 purification and utilization, and also to capture the CO2 and then distribute it for the methanol and urea production, and also to reduce the amount of CO2 that it's being generated, and also better utilizing the CO2. In general, we feel that this will give you the advantage not only to sequestrate the CO2, but also to use it or reuse this CO2 for both environmental and business point of view. I'm gonna just show you one video clip. It's when you see the reality of this, you will find that the difference in this plant. The voice. Can you check the voice?
We apologize for the technical difficulties, but we'll get it soon, hopefully.
Okay, so we will start with the other one and then go to this one. Okay.
Due to the technical difficulties, we're going to show you the video later until we can fix this. But I would like to thank Dr. Abdulaziz Al-Judai from SABIC on his presentation. We apologize about that. And now we're moving on to Kuwait Green, Mr. Nafisi on Green Carbon Roadmap. Mr. Nafisi is a director of Fahd Nafisi and Sons Group. He graduated with a business administration degree from the University of South Florida in 1996. He joined the family business and is active in the development of various projects. Among them in the Green Carbon Kuwait, and he is the vice chairman and managing director of Green Carbon. Let us welcome Mr. Nafisi. We're having all of the Q&A session at once by the end of the after all presenters present. So may you hold on that? Sorry about that.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for attending this gathering here, and hope to expose our efforts to promote such CO2 elimination schemes in mainly in the GCC. Green carbon was initiated 2004 by my dad, Fahd Al-Nafisi. He passed away 4 years ago, and his dream was to really eliminate all CO2 from sources in our region. This was his dream. So he told me, please, you continue what I've always wanted to do, and try to really make this happen as soon as possible. So I took the effort in trying to achieve something that I believe in heavily. So Green Carbon really is based in Kuwait as a base. The focus is really to promote the private sector and clear the idea of the participation of the private sector, and working with the governments of the region in really reaching certain agreements and tying in to make this happen. There are a lot of complications in this whole structure. The business models, you have to make it work the right way to really overcome such financial restrictions. So basically, this is Green Carbon, and now I'm going to go through the presentation to show you exactly what we do. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Tijani and Dr. Abdulaziz for their wonderful presentations. I think they've covered most of the work and the effort that we've put in this, being from Aramco and SABIC, the giants in the region. And I really respect and appreciate what you've done in the past. They always inspire me in reaching to where I want to reach in this modest move towards CO2 elimination. I just want to cover very fast the profile, our vision, the major applications that we think are important to really mitigate and eliminate CO2, and put it into some positive applications at different levels. I would then explain a little bit about the projects itself as a base, and then give you some idea about the future expansions and what we're hoping to reach in the near future. As I mentioned, green carbon started in 2004 with the aim to really mainly focus on tackling carbon dioxide emitted from sources in large scale. This needs a lot of tremendous effort. You need to scan, screen, and really do a lot of negotiations, and there are a lot of contractual work to be done, especially with governments in the region. Since we have very defined emitters in our countries, okay, such as the oil sector and some industrial, but mainly the oil sector, and they opened up the doors for the private sector to really sit and talk and try to make this happen, and not just them doing it by themselves. So this is a big move, I think, and I applaud them for that. Our vision is to become the leading carbon management company in the region. Of course, green carbon, unlike any other company, green carbon, the focus of green carbon is to really manage CO2. We have no other product. So it was created to manage carbon dioxide and build such facility plans. And hopefully in the future, we can get into other renewable and other mitigating schemes through other technologies. I'd like to talk a little bit about our CO2 applications that we are targeting. Of course, I'm sure that most of you know that the most famous or popular CO2 application is in the food and beverage. And that's where the carbonation process uses CO2 big time. It has a lot of, the property enhances the quality and the shelf lengthening for food. It's also used for the food freezing industry, logistics, and transit, refrigeration, and others in the food business. Of course, this is one of the most interesting that a lot of people, they don't know about, and the CO2 is being used in the water treatment and the wastewater in the industrial and mainly in the industrial and the sewage systems, where it balances the pH and it substitutes certain chemicals to avoid hazardous material to be entered into certain facilities where it's really dangerous and difficult to handle. Safety and cost efficiency is part of that goal. Controllability, less downtime, ease and handling and storage, ease of handling and storage. It's also in the long term cheaper than chemicals in such a function. One of the industrial applications here that is also common, I'm trying to focus on common applications here that we're trying to mitigate CO2 and, let's say, eliminate CO2. And when I say eliminate CO2, I'm not talking about stopping it 100% at this time or at this stage, but rather substituting our green CO2 for existing clients that are already buying CO2 from a source that is burning fuel to produce CO2. We find it, totally unacceptable. So green carbon is there to really provide a green CO2 that is already emitted in the atmosphere. It's processed, it's purified, and it's basically there for such clients to use. One of these industrial clients or applications is in the metal fabrication. Paper and pulp and paper also, they use CO2 as a feed stock. And the firefighting, dry ice blasting also is another method to application where CO2 is really used heavily now, starting from the West, and it's coming to our region. One of the most interesting applications that I see really that is coming to our region also is in the agriculture, and that's where these huge structures of greenhouse, they are totally isolated and they maintain temperature and control of CO2 and other and oxygen inside, and temperature, sorry. CO2 is injected in large quantities to produce such quality of such produce, you know, as lettuce, tomatoes, and pepper, and cucumber, and other essential food stock. The CO2 is injected in large quantities in these greenhouse projects, and they are eliminated through the photosynthesis process where the plants absorb them as a nutrient. It also acts as a pesticider where it eliminates the bugs and the bacteria from harming the plants. I find it to be really interesting in the near future, and it will really help mitigating CO2 and providing quality food for our for our region. Of course, one of the most desirable, or let's say long-term goals when it comes to green carbon is tackling the EOR and the CCS, and that's our ultimate goal. That's where the bulk CO2 comes in the picture, and that's when we have to expand to that level to meet such demand. This is the base. This is our company now, tackling mainly the merchant market, which is a commercial market. It's a fragmented, it's a small compared to the others, but this is the only way we can grow, is to really create awareness and try to substitute our green CO2 and eliminate the conventional burning of fuel. Excuse me. So in brief, our plant location is in an area called Shuaiba Industrial Area in Kuwait. It's located in the southeast. The source is from ethylene glycol plant in Kuwait, petrochemical, partner with Dow. Total plant production is 600 tons per day, which is around 200,000 a year. Plant capacity at optimal conditions, it could go up to 720 metric tons per day of pure CO2, liquid CO2. Storage capacity, we have 6 storage tanks. I'm sorry, this picture is from Google Earth, and it's a little bit old, but I wanted to give a view from the top to see the shape of the factory. If you can see at the bottom, these are the 6 vessels. Each one of them could handle 500 tons of pressured CO2, liquid CO2, total of 3,000 metric tons. Expected production, commercial, mid-2017. The purity level is 99.997%. So this is the purest we could get. And I believe it's very similar to what SABIC is also getting in their plant. Total plant area is 20,000 square meters, and we are hopefully expanding to double that space for future expansions. This is in brief our plant. These are the storage tanks, and being a commercial company, unlike other companies, we target the fragmented market. So trucks will come in, upload, and leave the facilities. We depend in the beginning. We will depend on X-Works, where they come and they just take the gas and utilize it. The green line, which is coming at the top, is from the source. It goes through and get into the facilities where it's purified and liquefied, and then it goes to the storage tanks. The brown large building next to the storage tanks is our dry ice facilities. That's where we will produce dry ice, and that's part of our production scheme. So future expansions, as I mentioned to you earlier, we are really basing our knowledge now in our existing level to hopefully soon expand to the next level to cater for EOR projects in Kuwait, starting in Kuwait and moving to the region. And in addition to that, we are in talks also with MEW and other sources of CO2 to really do and invest in CCS projects in Kuwait and in the region. And thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you very much, Nafisi from Green Carbon Kuwait. Now we'll move to our last presentation on Kafak CDR plant by Mubarak Al-Marri. Mubarak Hamid Al-Marri was a graduate from Loughborough University in UK with a Bachelor's of Chemical Engineering. He's begun working for the oil and gas sector in 2001 and joined Qatar Fuel Additives in 2003 and currently working as an operations engineer in methanol and utilities plants. He was involved in the revamp project of carbon dioxide recovery plant and currently involved in selective non-catalytic reduction projects, which reduces NOx emissions. In addition to that, he's a member of Kafak Incident Investigation Team and also an IChemE associate member. Let me give the floor to Mr. Mubarak Al-Marri.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today I'm going to talk about the CDR, project, which is carbon dioxide recovery plant that is actually based in Kafak. Before I start, I would like to give an introduction of Kafak. Basically, Kafak stands for Qatar Fuel Additives. Okay, and there are 4 shareholders. 50% of that share belongs to IQ, which is Industries Qatar, and then other 3 companies, 2 are from China and 1 from Canada. The products actually, first is methanol, which is the production is actually around 2950 per day. And also MTBE, which is methyl tertiary butyl ether. We produce around 1830 metric ton per day. Both plants started in June 1999. What is methanol? Methanol actually is CH3OH. That's the chemical name. And it is used actually to produce MTBE, which is actually added to fuel as a fuel additives. It can be used also as formaldehyde, and it can be used, actually it's been used recently in north part of Europe, and especially in Scandinavia, as a fuel. So they use methanol fuel instead of the fuel or diesel. It can be also converted into olefins, and also as an acetic acid. Kafak actually so far achieved, environmentally point of view, they have achieved the ISO 14001, that was back in 2004, and also leak detection and repair, LDAR program. Also the flare management program to reduce the flaring, unwanted gases with putting or injecting steam into it. So that's in an environmental point of view, it will minimize the carbons that's being emitted. Also, we have established the green belt development, which is basically it's a treated water that's been used to grow, grass, which is outside the Kafak fence border. So usually we take the water, which is inside the plant, and then treat it, and then use it for planting. The last one is Kafak CDR project, which is already commissioned 2 years ago, which is I'm going to talk about. Main mission actually for CDR project is to recover 500 metric ton per day of CO2. Also to inject CO2 back into methanol plant to enhance the production quantity and to increase the production. Also to minimize the CO2 release in the atmosphere that's coming out from the stack. As we see, this is the methanol process. First, actually, the natural gas that's coming from the source, it comes into the purification section. Purification section actually removes the sulfur that's actually within the natural gas. We need to minimize the sulfur because as soon as it goes to the reforming the process, it causes poisonous to the catalyst itself, and then which will degrade the life expectation for the catalyst of steam reformer. So basically, after the purification, goes into the treated stream, goes to the reforming section, where the synthesis gas is produced. So basically, NG gas, which is the natural gas, plus the steam, reacts to form synthesis gases that are hydrogen, CO, and CO2. And then after that, it compresses into the compressor, and then from the compressor, it flows to the reactor, which is the one on the right below. So reactor basically as a catalyst that helps for the reaction to form, from synthesis gases to crude methanol. Usually crude methanol will be around 5% of crude methanol that's been produced. And then the crude methanol will move to the distillation section. Distillation section is usually helps to separate the methanol from unwanted products. And then finally we get the refined methanol of 99%, 99.98%. So how does the CO2 comes into picture? Basically, from this picture we can see the stack, and usually stack, flue gas comes out from the stack. So we thought about a better method, with the help of Mitsubishi heavy industries, to take some of the flue gases and then take out the CO2 from the flue gases. This is the 3D dimension for the CDR project. Basically, as we see, as the flue gases flows to the CDR, first we need to cool it down and then absorb the CO2 by the help of an absorbent solution, and then strip it away actually from the solution itself, cool it down again, and then compress it and send it back to the reactor, which is a methanol plant. The principle actually, as we see, this is now the methanol reformer. Basically, it gives synthesis gases that are H2, CO, and CO2. Then it flows to the conversion section. But as we see, if we go to the left side, we take the flue gas from the performance stack, and then cool it down. After cooling, this is where the CO2 capture process starts. It starts from the absorber column, and then with the help of KS1 solution, first the KS1 solution will be considered as lean solution. And then after the CO2 capture, it becomes rich solution. Then after that, the CO2 releases, starts in the regenerator column, where the CO2 will be stripped out from the KS1 solution. And then CO2 compression starts. And then we send it back to methanol plant, where CO2 is injected with this synthesis gas before it goes to the conversion section. As I mentioned earlier, the CDR consists of 4 major sections. First one is the flue gas pre-treatment section, where we cool down the flue gas. And then the CO2 absorption section, where CO2 is absorbed with the help of KS1 solution. And then the solvent regeneration section, where the solvent becomes lean again. And then the CO2 will be released to the compression section. This is the block diagram of CDR plant. As we see, the pre-treated flue gas comes into the quencher, we call it quencher, where it's cooled down with the help of water, demineralized water. And then comes into the absorber, the one in the middle, and then absorbed by the KS1 solution. And the flue gas is actually will be vented to the atmosphere. And the CO2 will be absorbed in KS1 solution. And the KS1 will become rich. And then the KS1 needed to become lean again. So what we do actually is we strip the CO2 from the stripper. So we can recycle. We can recycle the KS1 solution back into the absorber as the solution, and then the CO2 purity will be released into the conversion section, and the purity is usually 99.9%. So the positive environmental impact for CDR, 500 metric ton per day of CO2 is actually equivalent to CO2 absorbed by 4 million and 200,000 trees in 10 years, and also CO2, that's emitted by 32,000 vehicles per year. And also we recover around 30 meter cube per hour of water vapor from the flue gas, and then recycle it back to the DM plant, which is the demineralized water plant. Thank you for attending this wonderful presentations, and I would like to thank Mr. Dr. Abdulaziz, Dr. Tijani, and Nafisi. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Barak Al-Marri from Kafak. We'll go back to showing the video that we couldn't show you guys from Sabiq. Give us a moment, please.
ما في voice.
You can use the now for question and answer while he's doing this.
So while we figure out this technical problem, we can take some of your questions. The gentleman over, can you please introduce yourself first and then start with your question? So, and direct the question to whoever you'd like to direct it to.